Welcome to Book Lounge by Libby. My name is Joe, and I'm so happy you're here. This is the place where book lovers, authors, and industry insiders come together to talk about the stories we love and the impact they have. Before we dive in, make sure you're following us on your favorite podcast platform and on the Libby app YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. Yes, we've got audio and video episodes available. If you'd like to check out the video, there is a link in the show notes. If you like what we're doing here, leave a comment or a review. It helps more folks find the show. Today, I thought it would be a great time for you to get to meet all of the incredible people who will be guest hosting this season. Every week, we have a theme for the episode, and in segment 1, you see a conversation with folks from the world of publishing. Then in segment 2, you get incredible and thoughtful book recs on that theme. This season, we'll be joined by Kayla, Carmen, Jananie, Amy, Bree, Cece, and Meara. And while I could introduce them all to you myself, I think it would be so much more fun if they did it. So sit back, get cozy, and watch or listen as our guest hosts do our version of the BookTube newbie tag. So let's turn the page and dive on in.
Hi, I'm Amy Allen Clark, and I am mom advice pretty much everywhere on the internet. I'm the host of the Book Gang podcast, which celebrates debuts, backlist books, and under the radar book gems. I'm the founder of momadvice.com, which I've been running for 21 years. And I also wrote a book called The Good Life for Less that was published by Penguin Random House. My favorite book will be different every single time you ask me. There's just no way that I could say what my favorite book is, but I can tell you one of the most memorable books, and that is Transcendent Kingdom by Ya Gassi. Now, this one is so beautiful, and it was told so beautifully through Bonnie Turpin's audiobook narration, and if you haven't listened to her before, you are in for such a treat. This book just broke my heart into a million pieces and sewed me back together again. And the story is about a young, gifted neuroscientist who's trying to understand the roots of addiction. And this has become really a personal project to her because her brother is addicted to opioids after an athletic injury, and she's trying to understand what makes one feel addicted to things so that she can crack the code to it and maybe understand her brother but heal other people through her science. And it's just very, very moving because she's trying to have a reckoning really with how God has done this to her. It's about her faith and also how science and faith can both live within her simultaneously. I think one of the biggest things that this book addresses is how callously indifferent we are to addiction when it comes to Black people. One of the lines that I highlighted in my book was, "We were 3 Black people in distress, nothing to see." And I think that her prose is just so magnificent that hits you like a gut punch, and that's why it's one of my favorites. Another book that's one of my favorites is a book called The Prettiest Star by Carter Sickles. Now, I don't think it got enough reception that it deserves because it came out in 2020 and we were kind of in the thick of things with the pandemic. But this is just a gorgeous debut. It's about a boy who comes back home. He has been growing up and living in New York City and having a beautiful life. And he basically discovers that he has AIDS and he is sick and he has to return home. And his family hasn't really understood his lifestyle, his sexuality, the people that he loves, who he gravitates towards. And they definitely don't understand him in Appalachia. And that's where he had grown up. And so when he comes back home, it is a lot about how there was so much stigma around people who have AIDS. So it's navigating the community pool. It's about navigating the dentist's office. It's about navigating sharing food. But it's also about navigating our feelings around sexuality. And hopefully our family comes to terms with that so that you can have a peaceful end together. And that is really what this book is about. The third book is just off the wall, and I feel like it's on my list every time I'm on the show or on any show, really. It's called One's Company by Ashley Hudson. This is a weird fiction pick, I would say. It's about a woman named Bonnie who has a very traumatic thing happen to her, and following that, she ends up winning the lottery, and she just does not want to live in reality anymore. It has just been too difficult for her. So she thinks about her favorite sitcom, which is Three's Company, and decides that she is going to use her lottery winnings to replicate the set. And she does, and it works for quite a while. She lives as the character, she embodies them, she breathes them, she does all their activities and reads their newspapers and anything she could find to recreate the set until, things that are real start to creep in and really mess with this false sense of security that she has created for herself. It's endlessly discussable, one of the best books I've ever discussed with my book club. Even when people did not like Bonnie or necessarily the themes, they really wanted to talk about it. So definitely One's Company. In my book space, we share space with authors every single week. So the Book Gang podcast, like I said, does under the radar books, backlist books, which means books that are a year or more older, and debuts. And I host conversations with authors. I spend a lot of time researching about the books that they're writing and hopefully giving readers a new way to look at that book. Our main show is all about the process. So what people see in the forward-facing Book Gang episodes are just learning about what sparked that idea, how they, plotted it, if they plotted it, some general themes about those stories. And then in our Patreon, we have them come behind the paywall and we do spoilers with every single guest. So they get to talk about the most challenging scene they wrote, if they always knew if their book was going to end the way they did. Surprise, a lot of people don't. And, we get to talk through some of the major things that they don't get to talk about. Almost every author that we ask, have you got to talk about this before? They're like, no, I've never talked about it beyond the pitch. So that's kind of an exciting aspect to our bonus community. In that bonus community, I also run a book club and we have authors come on and talk about their books with our readers. And we pick mostly backlist books for that space because we want people to be able to take advantage of the library and also give these books a new life. It's kind of like what I would call a revival tour. So that's another aspect of my work that I do. Also on Mom Advice, we do book lists that coincide with our podcast. So if we have a guest on and let's say that their book is about nurses, we have a book list that is about nurses, but we have bigger, broader themes too. We've got time travel, magical realism, literary fiction. Those big, broad themes are also there. And what I do is after our guest, tells me about their book and I understand all the themes that are around it, I pick a category for that book and then I pick 15 to 20 titles of books that I have personally read, as well as a few upcoming releases that I'm excited to read with you and tell you a little bit about them and why they might work together. So that means when you go to the library, you can always have a list of books. You could just do a big adventure on one type of book list. And it is so much fun to put those together. Reading for me is the ultimate escape. It's not just because I've now made it part of my work, but also because it is something that has always identified with me. I've always been a reader. I would say that reading has become even more important to me as I've navigated some health challenges. One of the things that I have to do in order to really take care of myself is to let my body rest. And I get really bored. And it's so nice to have books to escape with. There is no guilt with reading ever. I can read for an entire day and feel like I've accomplished something incredibly spectacular. And wouldn't it be lovely if we could do that every single day? But I use that as an example because reading has really given me a place to escape when things in my body become too difficult to escape. So I am so grateful for reading. The book series that got me into reading might not surprise you, or it might. I actually was a big Nancy Drew reader, and I did Laura Ingalls Wilder. I loved her books, and I also was very much into Ramona Quimby and books like that, as well as Judy Blume. So those were kind of my formative years of reading. And I did a lot of classics as well, like Little Women and Alice in Wonderland, and I loved books like The Secret Garden was one of my favorites when I was growing up. But I didn't necessarily have like a ton of classic background reading. I really feel like I've been cultivating that as an adult, and I just want to say that for any other reader who might have missed those formative years, it's never too late. I am so grateful for libraries, and I feel like libraries were the building block to my relationship with my dad. My dad worked swing shift at a local factory, and he wasn't home a lot of my waking hours because of the nature of his shifts. But no matter what, we would always make a plan for one day a week that he would take me to the library, and he let me have free reign of the library. He did not try to take me out of any section that I was curious about. And maybe I did read a little ahead of the curve for a little bit there. Me and VC Andrews were quite tight for a while. But I will say that I am so grateful for that time and for libraries because we didn't have a lot of money growing up. And so opportunities like that to go to the library were so special. And then later, we had a bookmobile that would come right on the corner of our road. And it was so incredible to just be able to like walk outside my door with a paper bag. I mean, I would totally do that now and go and load up a whole bag of books. I always participated in the summer reading challenges, and I was always excited to do anything that included the library activities. And I attribute a lot of my learning there as well because I did my tutoring there as well, where I would meet with my tutor and then I got to go browse the bookshelves after I got done. So I am so grateful for the Libby app, and I use it every single day with my work. I send all the books to my iPad, and I use the Kindle app to do all my reading. And one of the things I've discovered is that the iPad can read out loud all of my Kindle books. So I have it voice enabled, and I have it read all of my books, and when it's reading, it also flips the pages. So I can just sit there and enjoy the experience of that book and highlight as I go along, thanks to all the color-coded highlights and places to take notes. And then I just export them over to my email, and I have everything that I need for every single one of my interviews, but also so that I can always revisit those when I go back in to do book reviews and share my thoughts with other readers about the books that I'm reading. I have a very short list of reading essentials. Truly, my iPad is the way that I like to read, but also if I am not doing the voice-enabled technology, I love the Loop earbuds in my ears. Those are basically just a little bit of a sound dampener, so it just dials things down a little bit sensory-wise so I can really enjoy the books. Also, I love to have an ASMR room going. I found the Vault of Ambience, I think is what it's called, YouTube channel, and they have spectacular themed rooms. So like one of them is like a mysterious alleyway, or you can go on a carriage ride, or you can go to a tavern, or you can go to like a French bistro. And I love to have that up on my TV while I am reading so I can like just have all of that around me. I love a good scented candle. I'm also a big fan of essential oils that are like orange scented, and just put them into a diffuser and have that like bright smell going while I'm sitting there. And I am a big fan of peppermint tea with Oreos. I mean, we have to have one fun thing there. Oreos are amazing, and Oreos with mint tea kind of tastes like a Thin Mint and makes me feel like I can end the day well. Yeah, sure. Well, thank you so much for letting me introduce myself. I'm so excited to get to know you this year.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carmen, and you can find me as @Tomes and Textiles. I am on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Facebook. And if there's another social media channel, I'm probably @Tomes and Textiles there as well. I'm a Libra, and I have a lot of favorite books. I'll try to keep this list very brief. So one of my favorite authors, her name is Silvia Moreno Garcia, and she writes across all genres: fantasy, science fiction, mystery, historical fiction. But my favorite book by her is this sort of historical fantasy called Gods of Jade and Shadow. This is a jazz age road trip through Mexico featuring our heroine, Cassiopeia Toon, who is just a girl who wants to get out of her small town, and the literal god of death, who she discovers hidden in a box in her room. And we won't get into details here, but she's trying to help him like restore himself because he may die if he does not. And this is a beautiful fantasy, a lovely historical point in time in Mexico. as well as like an almost love story that will make you cry. You'll start to see a theme here of genres crossing over, but Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas is a historical fiction that is also a vampire story. This is the story of Nena and Nestor. They are childhood best friends. Nena gets bitten by a vampire. This is at the very beginning of the book, so I'm not giving anything away. And Nestor sees her die and runs away and never looks back. And fortunately, Nena makes it. And she just spends 10 years stewing on Nestor having left her. One day he appears, and it is the time of the Civil War, and Nena and Nestor are right in the middle of it, but there are also vampires. So this is a love story. This is like this epic vampire story, and it's just a really fantastic book. If you haven't guessed from all my recommendations, my space is dedicated to reading and reviewing books by Latinx authors as well as other BIPOC authors. One of the signature things that I do is that every Tuesday I tell you about Latinx books that are releasing on New Book Tuesday, and I focus on Latinx representation in publishing through that series, as well as discussions of all sorts of different issues within publishing where Latinx representation is lacking. And since my account is called Tomes and Textiles, I will mix in a little bit of fashion, a little bit of discussions of my vintage clothing collection. And I've always loved to read. And even when I go away from reading, I always return to it because for me, reading is escape. It's also representation, and it's also like finding this common ground with friends who tell me that they loved a book that I haven't heard of, and reading it and discussing it with them and having it become part of our friendship. So for me, reading is this solitary thing I do that can also incorporate people that I love in my life, and that was a gift given to me by people that I love in my life. My love of reading comes from my parents, and I feel that I am carrying on that with every book that I read. It's been a long time since I started reading, and so I don't have like that pinpoint of a book, but there are books that I read over and over again as a child. I reread The Girl with the Silver Eyes like an unhealthy amount. And also Miss Nelson Goes Missing. Like that was a big formative book for me. And then there were things like The Babysitter's Club. I feel that it was just, reading is just something that sort of happened to me, and that I just became a ravenous reader who just devoured books. What part have libraries played in my reading life? I learned the value of a library card very early in my life. I was not raised in the wealthiest household, so buying books really wasn't on the table. So my parents took me to the library and introduced me to the responsibility of having a library card, making sure that books were returned on time and not losing them. So I feel like that was ingrained in me at a very early age. And the library was also a place where I could like separate from my parents. My parents were immigrants, and like they were always wanted me very close when we were out in public. But the library was a place they would sit down and read and just hang out, and I would get to run around the library. So the library was a place of safety, a place that offered me so many different worlds because I could go and peruse the shelves and pick the books for myself. Obviously, it was a place of independence and free reading. And so those were little tiny seeds that were planted with little Carmen that made me grow up to be a huge book lover and now a full-time bookish content creator. What do you love about Libby and all the services that my library provides? So I think in particular for Libby, I love the convenience of it. I love that I get notifications for the magazines I subscribe to on it when they are out, and I get to like see them right away. And of course, the famous Libby hold, where I will put 30 books on hold and get 25 of them at the same time. I love the chaos of it. I love the ability that if I'm sick and not feeling well, I can just pick something from like the, books that are available right now. And it's just a very easy interface to my library. Insofar as the things that I love that my library has, It's everything from the different classes to book clubs to just having access to a librarian when I'm unsure of something. I also love that my library brings authors and has author events and signings. Maybe I'm just biased, but I really truly believe that my library, the Hillsborough County Public Library, is the best one. What are your reading essentials? I feel like a lot of people have this very methodical reading routine, but for me, it's I need my book or my phone or iPad with my ebook on it, and I need a place to sit, tabs if I am using them for a particular reason, and then that's it. The most comfortable place for me to read in my house is in my bed. It's just so cozy, and during the day, it gets lots of natural light. But I will literally read anywhere. I am always carrying a book. So if this same concept applies, whether I am out or home or visiting someone, I mean, sometimes you can find me at a party that's too loud reading a book in the coat room. So, I'm not too fussy when it comes to reading. I just need a good book and, time to read.
Hey, I'm Cece. My pronouns are she, her, and I am from the YouTube channel Problems of a Book Nerd, which is where you can find me most of the time. You can also find me on Instagram at @ccewing_. That's CECEEWING_. I feel like my favorite books tend to fall in a couple of really specific categories, and that's what you're gonna get. I tend to love really emotional YA contemporary books that are about identity and community. This includes books like Darius the Great Is Not Okay by Adib Karam, or Piecing Me Together by Renee Watson, or basically anything by Elizabeth Acevedo or Alice Oseman. My other particular passion, I would have to say, is sapphics across time and space, which shows up in more historical faves like The Color Purple by Alice Walker and Cantoras by Caro de Robertis, and it also shows up in weird and sometimes terrifying worlds like those in On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden, This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Mohtar and Max Gladstone, or The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling. Please know that this was a drastically cut down list, and every single book that I didn't get to talk about just now kind of hurt my soul a little bit, but I'm trying to push through it. On my channel and across my social media, you can find me sharing reviews, recommendations, and the occasional reading vlog. My focus on all these platforms is and always has been diverse books, reading them, recommending them, and basically, if you're looking for your next favorite queer book, I hope that I can point you in the right direction. My favorites come from kind of all over the place, genre-wise, but I have been more horror-focused of late, but that really just means that my end-of-the-month wrap-ups get to include super intense tonal shifts between soft queer romances and deeply disturbing horror. So, why do you love reading? I don't remember my life without reading. My mom and my grandma read to me when I was a baby, and I was taught to read very early on my own. I got to grow up fascinated by the kind of boundless creativity that exists within people. Even if I am stuck in a situation that is scary or stressful, I know that I can open my phone at this point and disappear into a completely different world, and that is something that I think is incredibly special. What book or series got me into reading? I think a huge influence for me was a series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket, of course. It was a series that didn't talk down to me, and it allowed me to explore sort of this macabre, dark world at my own pace. It's the first series I ever remember doing research for so that I knew when the next book was going to come out, because I was going to make my mom drive me to the bookstore and get it as soon as I could. I also read The Giver by Lois Lowry in maybe the 6th grade range, and it continues to this day to be one of my favorite books. I have read it probably 10 to 15 times, so it was formative then, it's formative now. What role have libraries played in my life? Libraries have always offered me the opportunity to explore, which is my favorite thing about reading. As a kid who was homeschooled for a big part of my youth, the library represented an entire world of knowledge that I could explore however I wanted to. And I think that's a reason that I was such a passionate student when I did start public school, because at that point, gaining knowledge was an adventure that I had put myself on over and over again. Libraries became my safe space. One of my absolute favorite things about Libby is the fact that I can add multiple library cards. It makes me feel alarmingly powerful. And with all of those cards, and now with having my library on my phone, essentially, I can turn my doom scrolling into maybe discovering a new favorite book. And that is a change I would like to continue to see in myself. I also think libraries do essential work in just creating community spaces. I think there's been a noticeable reduction in the number of free community spaces that are accessible across the United States, and still having that community resource is beyond essential to so many neighborhoods, to so many people. So I am so glad that I get to carry my library around in my phone, but I am also forever appreciative to my local library system because they keep offering me a place that I can just go and exist for free, and that is a beautiful thing to me. What are my reading essentials? So I'm a very read on the go kind of person. Whenever I have a free moment, I'll try to read as much as I can. But if I ever get to just settle in and have a nice reading session at home, here's what I need. I'm gonna need sticky tabs and pens for annotating the book that I'm reading. I'm also definitely going to need a cup of iced coffee, or if it is just a little too late in the day, maybe some hot cocoa or chocolate milk. I also love some light instrumental music to set the mood, and my favorite cozy blanket. At that point, I think the only snack that could make it perfect is a bunch of little mini Tootsie Rolls. Watch me destroy a bag of those while I am reading my new fave. Okay, excited to see how this goes.
Well, hey, y'all. I hope you're enjoying getting to know all of the wonderful folks who will be joining in to recommend books to you this season. I know we've got the book recommendations on lock, but if you're also interested in streaming smarter, I wanted to quick shout out Canopy, the streaming app from your public and academic libraries, and their podcast, The Film Library. The Film Library is a podcast from Canopy for movie fans who just want to dive a little deeper. This season is hosted by Christy Puchko, entertainment editor at Mashable, and Jeff Roseo, movie lover, collector, and social media creator. The Film Library is your guide to discovering the stories behind the movies you love and the hidden gems you just haven't met yet. Inspired by Canopy's themed collections, Christy and Jeff shine a spotlight on unforgettable performances, cult classics, overlooked Oscar snubs, and timeless cinema moments that deserve your attention. Whether they're breaking down a campy horror legend or raving about a scene-stealing supporting actor, their banter is thoughtful, hilarious, and refreshingly down to earth. No film degree required, just curiosity and a library card. With over 3,000... Just curiosity and a library card. With over 30,000 movies, documentaries, and TV shows available for free on Canopy, no ads, no subscription, again, just your public library card or university login, your next great watch is waiting. Subscribe to the Film Library wherever you get your podcasts, and stream titles at canopy.com or in the Canopy app. Now, back to the intros.
Hey y'all, my name is Bree, and I have a YouTube channel called Loc'd Booktician. I also have an Instagram, which is Loc'd_Booktician_. And you can also find me on Threads with that same handle. And you can also find me on TikTok under Loc'd Booktician. You can also find me on Instagram on another page called Blackoween-a-thon. Blackoween is a trademark reading challenge that I do every October from October 1st through the 31st that focuses on uplifting the voices of Black folks who write in the spooky genres like suspense, horror, crime fiction, mystery, thrillers. And it also has a touch of including Indigenous authors as well for one of the parts of the readathon. So if you're interested in that, you can holler at me in October and we can do that together. It's semi-interactive and we have a lot of fun. There's a lot of times where we can read together. There's a Discord. It's so cool. So you can definitely check that out later on this year. So when I think about my favorite books, there is some things that come to mind. My favorite book of all time is Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. That book is done so well where you're following a protagonist. You don't know how he identifies. You don't know much about this character, but you're watching him engage in different political spheres and seeing how he is digesting that information how he is being perceived and how he perceives others. Let's get into this baby. This baby right here. This is The Good House by Jananie K. It follows, or it starts off with the story about how this Indigenous man and this Black American woman came together and the life that they were trying to make for each other and the services that they were providing to this town. There are several tragedies that happens in this book. The woman/grandmother figure in this book has a child, and then that child, something terrible happens to them. Before tragedy fell upon the child of the grandmother in this book, she had a daughter as well. And then that daughter grew up with feeling some type of way about her family, about the things that her grandmother would tell her. And she always knew that her grandma had a connection to this house. Her grandma had a connection to the spirit world and did what I would equate to root work in this book. And while you're continuing to learn more about this family, the significance of this house, and the significance of the land on this house, you learn more about how there are other things lurking beneath that are plotting to take you out. And you also learn about how the ignorance of not knowing who you are and where you come from and how it can really turn out badly. I do want to let you know that there are several content warnings in this book, so I would say definitely look them up. But how this story was told, the magic system in this, the horror, the stalking, it's just so many different things in this book that makes it really horrifying. And it's a prime example when Jananie K says that Black history is Black horror. And this is exemplary in that. And then my last one I'm going to talk about is Monster. It's a psychological thriller that was written by Naoki Urasawa. And it follows the story of this doctor in his pursuit to figure out the truth, but it keeps having like some wild turns along the way. It's just very text heavy for a manga, or most mangas that I read, but it's also done very well. It's a quick page turner, and I just felt super sucked in. I absolutely love this manga series. Online, I do a lot of reading vlogs. I include cooking in my reading vlogs. I do reading sprints. I also do reading sprints specifically on my Patreon. I do the occasional TBR. I love to talk about single book reviews throughout my channel and throughout the places that I inhabit in this book community. And all of those things that I mentioned, there's always a spooky element to the content that I do. Typically, I would say maybe 95% of the time. I think reading is such a powerful tool, whether you're reading via audiobook or via ebook or physically, because it expands what you think you know about people and what you think you know about the world. And it just really gets you to understand that there are other perspectives in the world and how you can go about interacting with those perspectives. When I think about nostalgia in reading, I think about my childhood growing up in New Orleans and being in a community where literature or literacy was really hard to maintain. And I didn't have a lot of opportunities to visit libraries or even have access to them or know where they were at because of the violence and a lot of things that happened in my community. And it wasn't until I was 11-year-old until I really learned how to read. And when I went to college and finished college, I started being like, I think I really like reading. And at the time, I was only reading a little bit. I didn't realize that I had a pretty challenging form of dyslexia. And then I found audiobooks and it changed my life completely. So I love, love, love reading. And when I think about books that I would have wanted to read as a child, it's like the Percy Jackson series. It can be like The Vanquishers by Kayla Barron. It could be A Comb for Wishes. Those are things that I think I would have absolutely loved as a kid to read those books. Even Amari and the Night Brothers, I think that would have been fantastic for me as a child to read those books. What I love most about the library in Overdraft and then Libby being its app is that Libby is so user-friendly. You can return a book easily. You can extend your reading of a book really easily. You can put things on hold. You can notify yourself if the book comes in. There's just so many different things you can do. You can also add multiple libraries. I don't know y'all business. I won't get into your business. I don't know what y'all doing. But I think it's really dope that you can add multiple libraries to the app and you can be like, oh, I want to read this book. And it's not available in Denver, but it's available in New York, or it's available in some library in Florida, or what, or just in your state as well. So I just think it just expands your access to books. And I just love how user friendly and pretty and well made that the app is. When I think about my reading essentials, I think about tea being present. I think about Candy Crush, especially if I'm audiobooking. I think about a nice ambiance via the YouTube. Okay, they got some great ones out there. And I also think about my notes app. I would love to be a girl who annotates, but I always don't have the book to try to like figure it out. And also when I do mark it in the Libby app, that does help because you can just put a note and type everything in. And then if I get the physical copy, which is not always, but when I love the book so much that I go and buy it, I just go through those bookmarks and just add stuff in that way. But for the most part, I just use the note app in my phone to take notes about the book that I'm reading. Those are my essentials when I'm reading. Those are the things that I'm thinking of. You got to set the mood. You got to make sure that everything is given what it's supposed to have and gave. You get me? So that is the introduction to me, Bree, Loc'd Booktician, and I will see you soon.
Hello, I'm Kayla or Lala. I've been making online bookish content for 10 years. You can find me on most socials at Books and Lala. Being asked for a definitive list of my favorite books is wild. I have 700 things behind me that I've loved. I would say my favorite thing to read is a mix of weird and speculative. So I'm just going to grab 3 examples. Bunny by Mona Awad has this fever dream quality that I love. It follows writers, which I love, and it's about the power of imagination. That's how I would sum it up. The other 2 are both weirdly set in 1989. So in We Ride Upon Sticks by Quan Berry, we're following a field hockey team. They're kind of dealing with the occult. I love that. I also love a hive mind, and I love that it has a sports focus. And then I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones, my favorite author, is the most objectively horror here. And it follows a reluctant slasher. It's very campy, very fun. I'm just really into books that follow a main character who is just rambling to us a lot. So in this moment, those are my 3 favorite books, I guess, but it'll change tomorrow. I'm always looking to give and get diverse book recommendations, whether that be the genre, the author background, style, or the experience itself. I post twice weekly on YouTube. I do a mix of TBRs and book news and hauls, and then I'm always working on a vlog project. The concept could be anything from reading the lowest rated books on my shelf, other people's favorites, trying to find the scariest books I can, trying to find romance books I don't hate. Over the 10 years, my tastes and preferences have always been changing, and I think my channel is just a representation of my reader journey and tuning in to see what I like and what I'm interested in. So I just hope for the viewer, it's at least mildly entertaining. The reason I love reading is I can always come back to it. The enjoyment of reading has never left. There isn't a specific time frame that I associate with reading. There are other moments in life that feel bookended. There's a specific moment in time where I might be burnt out for a short period by work or life. There's a period of time where I'm bored waiting for the next season of a show I love to come out. There's a season where I can't go outside and do the activities that I love. But books are always there waiting. It doesn't matter where I'm at in life, what I'm doing, how I'm feeling. All reading requires is me and my eyes. And there will always be another book, another story that someone else has taken their time pouring their love into that I get to read. I grew up a voracious reader because my mom is. She can be credited or blamed for my love of weird horror because I was reading Stephen King off of her shelves way too young. One thing that I stole from her at a very young age and still have not given back is her Nancy Drew collection. I will always love a mystery plot, and that's thanks to Nancy. After this, I would pick up series like The Babysitter's Club, and I loved the mystery ones the best. I would pick up Archie comics. I loved the mystery ones the best. This series was so special because no matter if I was popping into the used bookstore, there was probably one there. If I went into the library, there was one there. And it doesn't matter if you were reading the 20th one, you can read them in any order, and the series was so expansive, it felt infinite. I really grew up at the library. We had very little funds in my household for books or activities. So the public library was my number one resource for reading, but also it was the activity. It was the place to be. It was an event going. In elementary school, my school library, I would take the bus that came half an hour later, even though it meant that I would have like an extra 15-minute walk home, just so I could spend that half hour sitting in the library and checking out a book every single day. And I think that's the reason why I still will check out a book pretty much every single day. Having grown up in the 90s, I still feel like having the library on my phone is kind of miraculous. I'm still impressed by it every single time, but specifically the interface and functionality of Libby is really the best. As somebody who works in the design industry, I just find the process of checking out books really satisfying. I love being able to filter by audiobooks and then sort by release date so I can go in there like once a week and get all of my holds in. I love how specific you can get with the reading speed of the narrator. I love how it tells you literally down to the minute when your book is going to be returned, because sometimes I'm really pushing that. I love how it has an estimated wait time for books. The entire experience is so convenient. It really ups my reading game, and it has the ability to introduce me to so many books that I've never heard of before. I will admit I'm not really one to set a vibe. I think just being surrounded by books is my perfect environment to read because maybe it's encouraging. I use books as motivation and also art in my home. Between making time for, work and time with my husband and my friends and taking my kid to various sporting events, anytime I have to just plunk down and open up a book, even for a couple minutes, I'm going to take it no matter where I am or what's happening around me. My only requirement is my emotional support water and maybe an instrumental playlist if I remember it.
Hi, I'm Meara, but you can find me as Meara is Reading on TikTok and Instagram. Okay, going through my favorite books is a hard question. I like to break it down into my favorite genres and then highlight some of my favorite books in those genres as opposed to just like my favorite books ever. My number one genre of all time is young adult dystopian. The Testing trilogy by Joël Charbonneau, I think, is criminally underrated. Not enough people know about it. And then also the Unwind Dysology by Neil Shusterman. Everyone knows The Arc of the Scythe, but Unwind, I think that started coming out in like 2007. I loved it when I was like in junior high and high school, to the point that I was talking about it on Tumblr and TikTok, or Tumblr and Twitter all the time. And my friends and I are actually in the acknowledgements of the last two books because we were big advocates for it in those spaces. I also obviously love romantasy, but All the Stars and Teeth, another one where the authors got some bigger stuff. Adeline Grace, the Belladonna trilogy. Before that, she had the All the Stars and Teeth duology, which if you're looking for just kind of like swashbuckling, found family, Avatar: The Last Airbender vibes, that is absolutely it. I loved it. And The One Dark Window, that duology by Rachel Gillig. Oh my God. I'm just like waiting until I've forgotten enough of it so that I can go and reread it because I loved that one. And then I also really love fairy tale retellings. So Small Favors by Aaron A. Craig. It's very decadent and slow, which is not usually my normal kind of story, but I was at Disney World and I couldn't put it down. It's a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, and it's got kind of like Little House on the Prairie vibes with this like sinister, who you're questioning who is Rumpelstiltskin the whole time. It was very different for a fairy tale retelling. And then also Alex E. Harrow has this like novella duology. It's A Spindle Splintered and A Mirror Mended. And I was devastated when I found out it was just a duology. I love them so much. It's like a Sleeping Beauty and Little Red Riding Hood retelling, but it like flips the like Wicked Witch narrative on its head. It's very fun. I wouldn't call it fun. I don't know. It's good. Check it out. It's sapphic. I love it. So on my Book Talk and Bookstagram, I really try to avoid talking about, the books that everyone else is reading and talking about. I really try to focus on the things that usually it's just like the random things that I picked up at the bookstore or the library, or sometimes it's things that publishers have told me about. But it's really just like exploring books that are in those genres that I'm interested in and posting honest reviews, like really coming out of it and being like, here's what I thought. Like, I just finished this book. Here's what I thought. One, it's helping people find books that they normally wouldn't have heard of because they're not talked about in those spaces. But the thing that I really enjoy is when I can tell that someone has read that book and they're looking to see if anyone else is talking about it somewhere. And usually they're not, but then they come find my video and they're like, oh my God, yes, thank you. Like, this is what I was looking to hear. And then the other thing that I like to do is using trending audios to, one, just promote bookish humor, but two, connect those audios to those books that people probably don't know and use that as another way to like create intrigue around these books that I think are fantastic and they just like aren't part of like the big cultural bookish space conversations. Why do I love reading? Oh my God. Asking why I love reading is such a big question. And okay, my answer, I feel like it's gonna be weird. Like obviously a lot of people like reading for escapism, but there's this like, I don't know if any of y'all like ASMR, but I feel like reading is almost like ASMR to me, where like when I am getting immersed in a book, when it truly is like sucking me in, I feel like my body gets tingly and I feel like my consciousness separates from my physical form and I'm just like there and I'm in it. And it's that feeling where like your words aren't seeing a page anymore. They're like in this like greater space, imagining it. And like I have a film, like I went to film school. Telling and like immersing in stories is like something that I've always really loved, but like books just do it in a way that no other medium can. And like it doesn't matter if it's like physically reading with your eyes or listening with your ears. There's just something about books and stories told in that way that just is like so different. And it's, oh my God, I just like can never get enough of it. What books or series got you into reading? When I was little, I was really into fairy tales. And if no one could tuck me into bed and read me a story that night, I had this like series of like cassette tapes with a partnering book where it was like a narrator reading you the book and you can flip through it. And so I'd like put myself to bed with these books. And so obviously like fairy tales were the jump for me of my love of reading. And that, you know, it grew into, I really loved books about princesses and like girls who like disguised themselves as knights and went off and did that. A series of unfortunate events, The Bailey School Kids, Junie B. Jones, The Click. And then, I mean, once we got into junior high, I found Twilight and like it was all over for me. I was never going to be the same. When it comes to the library, like there's few physical places that I have like such like memories impressed upon my soul. Like I from every single age, like being little in the picture book section to like graduating to the middle school section to the young adult section, like I can viscerally remember like sitting on that carpet, looking at those book spines, like pulling a book that off the shelf, because obviously I was judging them by their covers, and like coming up with this whole big pile and like bringing it to my mom or my dad and being like, I have all of these, checking them out. And then like the satisfaction of like building that pile up in reverse and being like, all right, let's go get more. I just like, it was always such a treat to get to go to the library with my parents and like kill some time there. And, you know, and then like the Louisiana summers, I remember like sitting outside in the heat waiting for it to open so that way I could go in and pick new books. And it's just like, there's this beautiful like lack of pressure that comes with picking out books at a library, you know? Like I love bookstores. Clearly I love buying books, but I feel like a lot of time I'm still feeling marketed to, and the library feels like such a like organic and personal experience of like, it feels like going into Narnia, you know? Like you never know when you open that wardrobe, when you go into that aisle, like what adventure is going to stand out to you there. Maybe I should compare it to getting in the TARDIS. You never know what's going to open behind the door. The libraries are a little bit wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey. What do you love about Libby and all the services libraries provide? Dude, I love Libby. It is one of those apps when I like pull down to search for apps on my phone. It's like, are you looking for Libby? It's like one of my favorite ways whenever I know that a book is going to come out and I'm like, oh, I want to read that, but I'm never going to remember it. I will just put a tag on it in Libby and be like, remind me when this is added. So that way I never have to like sit there anxiously waiting. It'll just get a notification one day and be like, oh, hey, you're up for this book. And I'm like, oh my God, I totally forgot that I even wanted to read that. Same thing whenever someone's like, you should read this. And you're like, oh, thanks, I'll add it to the list. And then the list doesn't really exist. No, the list is in Libby. I just go put a hold on it, wait until it's my turn. I never have to like put any more work into it until Libby tells me it's my turn to read it. And then, oh my God, for audiobooks, I have like probably 70% of my borrows in Libby are audiobooks because all the time, like I never go in there really looking for an intentional book to listen to. I more just like will go and be like, hey, what's available right now? And like is most popular or was most recently released or uploaded or whatever. And I'll just like skim. And that's why I found Shatter Me. Like I saw Shatter Me on there and I was like, I've seen this cover before. This is popular. I'll give it a try. Now I have the whole series in special editions. Like I'm obsessed with it. And like, it's just such a good way to discover things in the same way that like going into a library and like looking through the shelves is. I feel like Libby gives me that exact same freedom, but like anywhere. The crazy thing about like having like reading essentials for me is like my favorite joy in reading is when I feel like separated from my body. So really what's going on isn't the most important, but if I was to put together my perfect reading moment, I would be on a couch because beds put me to sleep. I would have a heated blanket or a dog, but I don't have a dog, so we'll go with a heated blanket. Usually like a sparkling water, like a Spindrift, maybe some sour candies. I do love a good sour candy. And then I would have this very specific album playing. It is this Cajun band, the Lost Bayou Ramblers, playing with the Louisiana Philharmonic Orchestra. It's a live recording. A lot of it is singing in Cajun, so I'm never like tuned into the words that they're singing, but it was just the perfect vibes for literally any genre. Like sometimes I'll listen to like fantasy scores for fantasy books, or I'll listen to I don't know, like other action movie scores if I'm doing a thriller or something. But like this album, for some reason, just complements everything. And I love to put it on my record player through the Bluetooth and just vibe out with it. And like that, I feel like that together is like my perfect formula for like truly having an out-of-body experience with my book. All right, and that's it. So again, I'm Meara. Meara is reading, and I'm looking forward to talking about more books with you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jananie, and my channel is called This Story Ain't Over, and you can find me at This Story Ain't Over on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Some of my favorite books include Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel, which is a feminist retelling of the ancient Hindu epic, the Ramayana. A recent fave of mine is Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Huang, which is an incredible dystopia literary fiction. And another favorite is Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake, which is a bit of a love story and also just a story about mental illness. What I love about my favorite books is that they are all really character-driven stories, and they center BIPOC main characters, which is representation that I never got to see growing up. On my personal book spaces, I share my thoughts on books that I've recently read. I share hauls and TBRs, and I do a lot of discussion videos as well recently that sort of encompass my thoughts on different topics within the book community and within publishing. And at every opportunity that I can, I try to uplift marginalized and underrepresented authors. I love reading for so many different reasons. When I was younger, it was a real escape from a lot of the difficult and hard things that I was going through. And as I grew older, it became a really amazing way to understand and empathize with other people around me who did not, look like me or have similar experiences to me. And it also became a way to see myself represented in fiction and to feel like the hero in my own story. To this day, I love reading because it just brings people together. It is a hobby that is in some ways more transcendental. Like it brings people together on a different plane of existence. You are bringing imagination and thought and belief into this situation. And I think it just creates this really beautiful and incredible space to deal with and interrogate all the things that we're going through. The book or series that got me into reading was twofold. So one, there was this book called Dragon Rider by Cornelia Funke, and that was a book that I read in like the 3rd grade, and it was the first fantasy book, I think, that I actually read and really enjoyed. It did take me a whole year to finish the book, but at the end of it, I felt like, oh, this is something that I could actually enjoy. Prior to that, I really didn't like reading. I couldn't find any books that I liked. And up until that point, I hadn't read any fantasy. And so I fell in love with a lot of fantasy books after that. And I also read Percy Jackson and fell in love with that series. And it really just made me feel seen as a kid with ADHD, with, a lot of things going on in my, home life. And I just felt so seen and so excited by the adventures that Percy was going on. For me, libraries played a huge part in my life, in my childhood, in my formative years, because I could really only access reading and books through my library when I was growing up because I didn't grow up with a lot. And having enough money for the school field trip was already a struggle, so buying books was kind of out of the question. And oftentimes, actually, the only times I bought books was when I would get birthday gifts or gift cards from friends or family, and I would save those up to go buy books. But otherwise, I was reading from my library, and I loved my library. It was a place that my parents would just leave me for multiple hours to just hang out if they had stuff to do. And I was so happy in libraries because it was just endless amounts of time with so many different books that I could discover and, dive into a completely different world. And it just made me so happy. So I was constantly borrowing books from the library and at the library reading. And to this day, I am still using my libraries a ton. I absolutely love Libby because I can now access my library books in multiple different formats and a lot of digital formats. I am someone who is neurodivergent and I struggle with reading in physical formats a lot. So a lot of times I am borrowing audiobooks and ebooks from Libby and reading those. And they just bring me so much joy because it allows me to keep doing this hobby and thing that I love so much, even when my mind does not want to let me do it through the traditional means. My reading essentials aren't that crazy, to be honest. I am someone who, if you just leave me with a book, I am happy. whether that's on my e-reader right before bed or if it's with my audiobook while I'm doing something else, washing dishes or folding laundry or sewing. But I have to say that nothing beats taking a book to the coffee shop or to a park and just having that white noise around me and just sitting down with like a nice drink, whether it's iced or like a coffee. That is the perfect vibe and just the perfect like relaxation for me.
Now, how fun was it to get to know all of the amazing voices that will be bringing us recommendations every week? Come on, I love it. Thank you to everyone for your contributions to the show and for letting us learn more about you and your reading habits. Can't wait to see who will be joining us for recommendations next week. Speaking of next week, thank you for following and joining me today on the show. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss next week's episode, where I dive into a conversation about summer reading with Jamie Sumner, Kelsey Mpichike, and Julie Soto. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow Book Lounge by Libby on your favorite podcast app and check out the Libby app YouTube channel for our video content. You can also find us on social at libby.app on Instagram. If you're loving the show, a quick rating or review helps other book lovers find us. Thank you so much for joining me today, and as always, happy reading! You can sample and borrow the books from today's episode in the Libby app, or if you're a librarian, find them for purchase in Overdrive Marketplace. Book Lounge by Libby is a proud Evergreen Podcast signature program. Explore more amazing shows at evergreenpodcasts.com. This podcast is produced and recorded by me, Joe Skelly, with editing by Andrew Alonso. Our theme music is High Five by Rex Banner, used with permission. Book Lounge by Libby is presented by the Libby app. Learn more at libbylife.com/booklounge.